to this evening's book talk here at the main library. I'd like to also welcome you to the new multi-purpose area. We just had our grand opening last week. As you can see, this is a completely new space, and it's very flexible. One of our venues for book talks. So tonight's book talk, Journeys with the Mission, Travel Journeys of the Right Reverend George Smith, First Bishop of Victoria. And our speakers tonight are Dr. Gillian Bickley. Our moderator is Bishop Andrew Chan. And our readings will be Dr. Werner Bickley, MBE. And I am Gary Chin. I am the Public Relations and Development Manager for the libraries. And welcome you to the talk, and I will now introduce Bishop Andrew.
Ladies and gentlemen, first thanks Mr. Chen for allowing us to use this place. It's a very nice place to have such talk. I think I hope that all you feel comfortable sitting here. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So welcome to this talk. In fact, I look forward to this talk for a long time as you hear me? Yeah. And Anglicans. I much like to know more about our history. Why? Because a quotation from a church historian, Etienne Gilson, once said, "We live in a time and place full of Christian ideas which have no memory of their place of birth." I think this quotation resonates with Christians in Hong Kong, especially Anglican Christians in Hong Kong, that we have talked a lot about our present situation, our challenge, our ministry today, or some political issue relating to the church, or our education, our social welfare ministry, but know very little about the history of our church. So I feel Gilson's critique to a certain extent reflect the reality of our Christian life today in Hong Kong. Hopefully sometimes it's quite true. We are full of Christian ideas but have little memory of the place of birth. Now at present, the Anglican Church, we have speak more about it. Victoria, in the very beginning, this diocese was known as the Diocese of Victoria. So so the Hong Kong Anglican Church is the offspring of Bishop Diocese of Victoria. And at present, the Anglican Church is a province. In the Anglican Communion, a province is a self-governing church composing of several dioceses and a fully autonomous member within the Anglican Communion. Now we have 3 dioceses and 1 missionary area of Macau. This province nowadays was one of the members of the Anglican Communion. Now we have 40 independent churches in the Anglican Communion. This province is still a very new province. We were inaugurated in 1998. In the previous 20 years, we held 7 General Synods. General Synod is the highest governing body of the province. Now, in our province, we have 7 General Synods were held in the last 20 years. We passed 3 policy papers in the last few General Synods meetings. First, education policy paper. Second, social service policy paper. And third, church mission papers. Well, in these papers, we affirm that the church has been providing all these services, education, social welfare, pastoral care, ministry, since the early years when the first colonial chaplain, Reverend Vincent Stanton, was appointed, and the first bishop, the Right Reverend George Smith, was enthroned in Hong Kong. Yet we acknowledge our forefathers' great contribution. They have made a solid foundation for our church. However, more than that, their commitment, devotion, and even sacrifice for the people of Hong Kong or even wider area in China and in other areas of Asia, in the work of evangelism, education, and social welfare is what we should learn. Nowadays, if you visit our school, our welfare, our church, you could find a note of the foundation stone when the church or the school was founded, and the foundation was laid, probably by the bishop or by some dignitary of the community. But I think the work of our first bishop is founding an invisible foundation stone in our heart. So that as such, an Anglican, we should be very conversant in our early history of our church in Hong Kong. So I really appreciate my good friend Dr. Gillian Beckley for her writing of this very, very good book, which helps us to know more about our first Bishop George Smith and his wife Lydia. In her writing, we do not only understand the mission journey of Bishop Smith in China, even other Asian countries. We may read his dedication to the ministry in China and how he takes seriously his mission in China. I think we all know Gillian if you come there. So she's a scholar, historian, as well as an editor. Now, shall we have her on the stage? No, not the stage here, just on the front, to give her a talk.
Thank you very much.
Gillian.
I have to wear glasses. I can either see my script or I can see you. I have to write it, otherwise I forget what I said, so forgive me for looking at the script. So thank you very much, Peter and Gary, for hosting the talk. And I'd also like to thank all the staff of the libraries for their courtesy, their hard work, their promotion, all the arrangements and the posters. It's a lot of work, so thank you very much and thank you for your support. I would also like to thank Bishop Andrew for his informative and kind introduction. He's given us a modern perspective which encourages us to work harder in providing information about the places of birth of Christian ideas in the church in Hong Kong today. So everybody, thank you all very much for coming. In Hong Kong we're all very busy. There are many, many choices. And so we're very grateful that you made the choice to come here this evening, and I hope you'll find it interesting and worthwhile. Now it's going to be an introduction to the first modern, uncensored edition of travel writings by the Right Reverend George Smith, first Bishop of Victoria, and a little about the bishop himself and the world he operated in. I'm grateful to the Lord Wilson Heritage Trust that provided some funding towards the research, and particularly towards publishing the book, to the Baptist University, Hong Kong Baptist University, which gave some research funding a long time ago. And I would like to thank Bishop Andrew, who has given moral support for a very long time in different roles. First as Bishop's Chaplain, then as Dean of St. John's, and now as Bishop. So thank you very much. We recognise it's a privilege that you've given time from your very busy schedule to be here this evening. So thank you very much indeed. We all value your presence. to colour code with the chairs and the background with his tie this evening. He's always given a great deal of support, his time, his moral support, and also we're going to have the pleasure of hearing him reading from the book later. Well, you have to listen to me first, but then the reward is you can hear Werner reading from the book. And the book couldn't exist without kind permission of the Church Mission Society, formerly the Church Missionary Society, which gave permission for the text to be published, and also for some of the illustrations from its journals to be published. So I'm going to show you some slides, and then Werner will read from the book. First of all, you should know that George Smith, what an interesting noise everywhere. Okay, so this is the book, which you see there. The cover on the book is by the portrait is by kind permission of Hertford College, Oxford, and Art, UK. So George Smith was born a very, very long time ago. Let's try to imagine what it was like. 19th of June, 1815, which was the day after the Battle of Waterloo, the day after the Battle of Waterloo. And he died, a relatively young man, he was 56, 147 years, 11 weeks ago, on the 14th of December, 1871. So this is an artist's impression of what George must look like. Very handsome looking man, slightly feminine features perhaps, but maybe that was what the artist wanted to do. I'll show you some photographs later, and you can compare and contrast the artist's rendition with the photographs. Now here's the same again, and very, very faintly at the very bottom is the bishop's coat of arms. And Bishop Andrew has very kindly explained something about the province, formerly the Diocese of Victoria. It's very interesting that Central District was made into a city in order that there could be a bishop. You can't have a bishop without a cathedral, and you can't have a cathedral without a city. So Central District was created a city in order that Bishop Smith could be made a bishop. And the city was called Victoria. Many cities were called Victoria at that time, because of course Queen Victoria was queen at that time. Lots of Victorias everywhere. But George Smith was Bishop of Victoria, Hong Kong. He was important for many reasons. As a young man, he was one of the first two Anglican missionaries to China. On his return to England, he was consulted, I can see the next one, that's right. So it's very confusing. I can see this one and I can see the next one coming up. It's supposed to be helpful, but it's slightly confusing. I'm not used to such sophisticated technology. I'll get used to it. So when he returned to China, he was invalidated out. He became very ill. He was consulted by leading politicians in London. Very, very few people had been to China. So he was a curiosity. It was thought that he would have a great deal of useful information. So he was invited to an interview with leading politicians and asked questions about China. And he wasn't quite prepared for it. He wasn't expecting to be asked for information. He was expecting to be given information. So he was a bit at a loss. And afterwards he wrote a letter apologizing and said, well, here is some information. So he was, as we know, the first Bishop of Victoria. He was consecrated in Canterbury, 29th of May 1849, and he arrived as bishop the 29th of March 1850. He was the first warden ex officio of St. Paul's Missionary College. This is what's now becomes St. Paul's Boys' School, opposite the university. Everything has a past. Everything has a past. He supervised the reconstruction of the colonial chaplain school building to house St. Paul's Missionary College. This is quite important because there's some controversy about who founded St. Paul's Missionary College. It was Bishop Smith. It was not Reverend Stanton. Reverend Stanton started the colonial chaplain school because he was colonial chaplain. But then later it became St. Paul's Missionary College. It was intended to train Chinese missionaries to go to proselytize China. It was not very successful in doing that because Chinese young men found the advantages of learning English an insuperable temptation. They could get a lot of money working for businesses in Hong Kong, so they didn't become clergymen at that time. Things have changed now. He was also chairman of the Board of Education. He selected Frederick Stewart as the first head of the Central School, now Queen's College, now located in Causeway Bay, but previously located, not Sherman, no. What would we call it? Gough Street, in Gough Street. Thank you. Hollywood Road in Gough Street, yes. It had two buildings, one on Gough Street, and then it moved very slightly up the hill when it changed its name to Queen's College. Then became the Junior Police Mary Quarters, and now has become what? Thank you very much. The 19th century is easier for some of us than the 21st century. Have to keep up to date. Okay. And his wife was also very important in education. She founded, among others, what is now known as the Diocesan Girls' School, now in Georgian Road. So a lot of importance in the early days of Hong Kong, continuing to today. Bishop Smith was also chairman of trustees of St. John's Cathedral. I think no bishop today would have that opportunity. It gave him immense power.
Yes.
In one of his letters, which will be in the next book, in one of his letters he wrote, "The cathedral is mine," because he'd managed to get some law passed, but it's no longer the case. He was also a corresponding secretary of the British and Foreign Bible Society. He wrote books and pamphlets. I'm not going to read the titles, I'm just going to scroll through them. Just for you to see how very, very busy and active he was, and to give you some idea of the subjects. They're mainly about the mission to China, this is an exception to the rule about slavery. I think when he went back to England from China, for a while he seems to perhaps have been a fashionable preacher. And he's a nice-looking man. He'd been to China, a lot of background to that. And this book is a devotional book. I don't think many people have read it. There was a lot of discussion about, there was something called the term question, incredibly complicated and difficult. And the point was, what should be the Chinese translation of the word for God? So a lot of discussion, and of course very, very important, because if you're going to a new mission field, you need to translate the Bible. If you're translating the Bible, you've got to know what terms to use. So there was a great deal of controversy, very, very difficult. And I'm happy to say that Bishop Smith was he sought to mediate between different points of view. He wanted to be pragmatic. He didn't want people to argue. He wanted people to do what was sensible, etc. So that was good. So he seems to have been quite good at diplomacy. And unusual. Don't ask me any questions about that because I didn't check that before I came. This is very interesting. There was a wealthy lady living in Cheltenham, Miss Cook of Cheltenham, and she gave a lot of money for missionary subjects, including the mission to the Jews. It's extraordinary. She was criticised. It was a bit like people's criticism today about people leaving their money to a dog's home. I mean, it's people's money, isn't it? You think they could do with it what they want. But there's a lot of criticism of her for giving her money to overseas missions. People normally say, a lot of good causes at home. Why don't you use your money at home? But he was helping her by doing this. The term question again, proper translation of the word of God. I'm not going to give you the name for Luke, also spelled L-O-O-C-H-O-O, because the name we call it is politically very sensitive at the moment. So it's better just to use the old word for it, right? So this is also a missionary area, and he was very supportive of the missionary there. So when he went home on leave, he would preach and also raise funds. Fundraising was very, very important. How can you conduct a mission without money? Not so many Miss Cooks giving their money, and she gave the money for the mission to China. So Bishop Smith was very, very careful to use money for the purposes for which he received it. And so you can see the accounts very carefully. The accounts for St. Paul's, the accounts for Miss Cook's fund. Fascinating reading. And I've got all of them. Very interesting to analyze. And then, the 10 weeks in Japan. So he did visit, he was very early visiting to Japan. And his purpose there, he found it interesting to travel around, of course, but his purpose was similar to his original purpose in visiting China. That is to see how a Christian mission could be conducted in Japan. Now, let's now think about Hong Kong at that time. So during the bishop's time in Hong Kong was quite a small place. It was quite a small place. So Hong Kong Island, as we probably all know, was ceded to Britain in perpetuity on the 26th of June, 1843. By the Convention of Peking, signed on the 24th of October, 1860, Kowloon Peninsula, with Stonecutters Island, was also ceded to Britain on the same terms. It was another 38 years before the new territories and numerous islands were leased by Britain for 99 years in 1898. So you see, Hong Kong was not a very big place when Bishop Smith was here. I'm going to show you some slides to show you what Hong Kong, St. John's Cathedral, and St. Paul's Missionary College were like during the time when he was bishop. So George Smith arrived as bishop on the 29th of March, 1850, and the tower of the cathedral is said to have been completed in 1850. So I guess this is, if I do, yes I do. So have you got it? Yeah, there. Okay, that's the cathedral. Quite different from how it looks now. So I guess that's what it was like when Bishop Smith arrived. Now, just compare it with today. You can barely see the cathedral tower today. I don't think you can see it from the harbour, even when you're really close to it. It's obscured by buildings. So in other words, the cathedral was a very prominent landmark at that time, and very important for, I suppose, Westerners in Hong Kong, or perhaps we should be more specific, for those Westerners who were Anglican in Hong Kong. And it was used for church parade for the army. The congregation was very, very small in the early days. I've heard the number 70 mentioned. The cathedral was surprisingly large. It was built surprisingly large for such a small number of people, but that was to accommodate the army, to accommodate them at church parade. So let's go back to the past again. This is 1854. So where's the cathedral? Okay, so there's the cathedral. I don't know whether the college is behind the mast of that ship. You can see the college? You can normally find it from... I'll push the wrong thing. Yes, you can see it from the tower. That helps one to locate the college. This one is between 1856 and 59. So Bishop Smith lived in that building when it looked like that. So this is about 1860, painted by a Chinese artist. And this is about 4 years before George Smith and Mrs. Smith retired from Hong Kong. I'm going to show you a detail. So, tell me if I hit the right thing. So I suppose, am I right? Is that the cathedral? And I suppose this is the college. Would that be right? At least it's got the tower. I assume it's the college. I assume that's the college. I could be wrong. Now, this is what it looked like a few decades after the Smiths had left Hong Kong. And so we can see that the artists' drawings, paintings, were pretty accurate. We can see that that's recognizably the same building, the photograph. And this is what it looks like, or it looked like when I took the photograph. More or less looks like today. So we see the same structure. Do you all know where it is? Near the foreign correspondence. Lower Albert Road. Lower Albert Road, yes. It's worth going to have a look. Now let's have a look at Bishop Smith. So we've already seen the image on the front cover of the book. If we look at his hands, we see the book in his hand and the Chinese characters. Who can translate those characters?
Yes, I would Jesus.
Yes.
Savior, Jesus.
Well done. So I asked Irene Wong of the Special Collections at Baptist University, and so the first line, line 1, is the Saviour, and line 2, Jesus Christ. So congratulations, you were very quick, everybody, doing that. I don't know how old he was in that one. I mean, he looks relatively young, doesn't he? He looks very young indeed, in fact, in that photograph. I don't know whether this is when he was going to China for the first time to record that, or when he came back, or when he was bishop. I don't know at all. Now here he is, aged about 46. I think you can say it's the same person as the original portrait we saw. And another one when he's between 47 and 51. Oh, quite a nice looking man. Does it look as if he wore his hair tied back from that one? That's very interesting, isn't it? He wasn't a hippie, that must have been the style. It must have been the style. A very serious man. Now a little bit about his life. A little bit. So 6 weeks after he was consecrated as bishop in Canterbury, he got married. This is quite a common thing for people to do before they were going away. Either they came back on leave and got a wife, or they got married before they went overseas. So he got a wife. And he married her here, in church in Beckenham. And this was his father-in-law. We don't have a picture of Lydia. If anybody comes across a picture of Lydia Smith, please let me know. I'm looking for it very hard. Well, this is her father. Maybe she looked like a female version of her father. I don't know. So you see, he was the secretary of the British and Foreign Bible Society. So in other words, George Smith married into Anglican aristocracy. I would say the aristocracy of the church. It was an extremely suitable marriage. And everybody was, the Church Missionary Society was delighted that he married this lady. And apparently she was very experienced in working for the church. She is described as having been a curate to her father. I suppose this means she did a lot of the parish work for her father. And then this is the memorial to her father, which we photographed when we went to Beckenham. You'd be interested to know that Mr. Brandon, who in his time had been a society preacher, the Savoy Chapel in central London. This is a very exclusive world that bishops were married into. He settled a certain sum of money on his daughter on the marriage, and I'm sure that was very useful to the young couple when they got married. He settled £500 plus another £500. In those days, how much was that? An enormous amount of money. Isn't that correct? I can't think how, but it's an enormous amount of money, and it would have bought a great deal of things. So maybe the church in Hong Kong was partly subsidized by what the father-in-law gave. So, well, after the marriage, they left England about 4 months later. They embarked on 6th of November, 1849. They arrived in Hong Kong Good Friday, 29th of March, 1850. People in Hong Kong said, "How quickly you got here. It only took you 5 months." So, I mean, that gives perspective, doesn't it? When you leave your country, you go somewhere that's 5 months away, particularly for the woman, because it's the first time she had done it. For him, it was the second time he'd come out to this part of the world. So I guess they got to know each other on the journey, because probably they hadn't known each other very well at all before they got married. So they arrived. So what do people think about them when they arrived? So a contemporary observer describes the bishop as a tall, thin, pale-looking man, and Mrs. Smith as such a ladylike creature and so amiable. So it's a diary writer who recorded this in his diary, and he was charmed by her company, and he wrote breathlessly, "Mrs. Smith, wife of the Lord Bishop of Victoria, saw her, delightful chat. What a treat to converse with people like this in a place like Hong Kong." Because in those days, Hong Kong was really like a frontier town. I mean, it's very, very, very early days. Quite rough. You know, people, there was one school principal who carried a pistol with him. Well, now based in Hong Kong for 1850, Bishop Smith did a great deal of travelling, including, as Bishop Andrew has mentioned, the Chinese mainland, India, Ceylon, the Luchu Islands, Java, Australia, Japan, and San Francisco. The travel journals contained in this new book are his original, but previously censored, record of some of his journeys. This is uncensored material. And now here are some images. So here's a map. So from the map, Church Missionary and Society stations are underlined. So we have Shanghai, Ningpo, Fuzhou. There's the three. So Shanghai, Ningpo, and Fuzhou. And the treaty ports are solid dots with a circle around them. So three of them are the same. Shanghai, Ningpo, Fuzhou, Canton. What have I missed out?
Just a bit to the right.
Right. Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So you see, it was very sensible to start a mission near a treaty port. Now here are some of the illustrations. These are not necessarily illustrating what Bishop Smith did or where he was, but they give an idea, right? So this one, Ningpo, the Ningpo tea shop and the missionary. It seems that they were very, very aggressive in those days, that they went to people's shops to proselytize. They used the customers of an establishment as a captive audience to try to proselytize to them. And certainly Bishop Smith did do that as a missionary and also, I suppose, as bishop. This is called a street in China. The city and suburbs of Ningpo. Very interesting. Here is Episcopal Church, Ningpo. I don't know whether it's an English Anglican church or whether it's an American Anglican church. Here we have seen at the gate of the besieged city of China. You see the missionary trying to enter with asking, can you go in? Being denied, no, you can't come in here. So it was a violent, disturbed world in China at that time. It's the time of the Taiping Rebellion and various other rebellions. Here we have another street scene. City of Ningpo. Now, okay, so you're traveling to all these places. You have a mission. In the case of Bishop Smith, part of his responsibility was to supervise all Anglican clergy in China and on ships within 100 miles of the Chinese coast. He had that responsibility. So he had to travel. But how did you travel? How did you get from Hong Kong to China? Who paid for it? Somebody asked me the question, how it was paid for at the end. It's a lovely, interesting topic. So, ship. Then when you got there, how did you travel? Horse riding, walking, sedan chairs. There's a lot of ships along the rivers as well. In this book, there's also an account of journeys to India. And this one is how you landed at where? Madras. So you see this very perilous. So the ship, there wasn't a nice disembarkation point. There wasn't a pier, like the Star Ferry pier or anything. The ship you had to change from the ship, from the long-distance ship to a ship like this to try to get to the shore. And Bishop Smith was not a good traveller, very poor traveller, so he had to do this. On land in India, this is how you travelled. You were carried. He made, I think it was a 500-mile journey, like this. Well, not very nice for the passenger, but what about the chaps carrying you? We'd be happy to know that they would change every 8 miles. So think how many people that would have involved. So that's a little bit about what he looked like, what Hong Kong, China looked like, what the travel was like. Now what about his family life? In Hong Kong, 3 children were born. The first, Henry Van Brandon. Brandon was the father-in-law's surname. Van was the name of the Church Missionary Society secretary, so he was honouring 2 important men in his life. Second son, Andrew Brandon, died when he was a toddler, and he is buried in the Protestant cemetery, perhaps now called Hong Kong Cemetery, before called the Colonial Cemetery, but it's the same place, the Colonial Cemetery. So this is the grave of Andrew Brandon Smith. The text isn't very clear, but you can actually make out. Right. And the last child was a girl, Alice Victoria Brandon, and she seems to continue to live with her mother during at least part of Lydia's very long widowhood. George Smith retired from his see in 1865. On his return to England, he became a vice president of the Church Missionary Society and attended their committee meetings, always advocating strongly the mission to China. He visited Sweden, Norway, and Russia on behalf of the Bishop of London. He attended the Pan-Anglican Synod in 1867. Okay, where is he? Can you find him? Where is Bishop Smith? Where is he? Once I tell you, you'll know it's him. Oh, anyway. This one.
Yeah.
Right, so you see, he is tall, he is thin. You can't tell whether he's pale. But it's still recognizably the same person, right? As I mentioned, he died at age 56. When he died, he was living here. The cause of death was given as paralysis of the brain. The Guardian described him as worn out prematurely by an effect of climate and the hardships incidental to early settlers in the East. He was buried at Ladywell, or Lewisham Cemetery, near London. His wife Lydia survived him by 32.5 years. She died in 1904, aged 85, and she's buried with him. This is the bishop's inscription. Some of the words, the text is resting in Jesus. On Lydia's side, the words are the peace of God which passes all understanding. And at the end of the tombstone, we see the bishop's writing. Now we're going to move towards the book. Before that, I just mentioned that there was a memorial stained glass window in St. John's Cathedral, subscribed for by former pupils of St. Paul's Missionary College. So they very, very much appreciated the efforts that the bishop and his wife had gone to for their education and moral welfare. And by that time, many of those former pupils had very prominent roles in Hong Kong and some in China. So now, coming to the book, I'd like you to see what the handwriting was like. This isn't the worst handwriting. It's a good sample, a representative sample of his handwriting. And here at the bottom, we see his signature. we see his signature. We did see his signature. Yeah, signature at the very bottom. You can stand up if you can't actually see it. Very distinctive signature. I think part of the reason why people haven't written much about Bishop Smith is because they didn't realise it was him. Because to understand the convention that he would sign himself George Victoria, who is this George Victoria? We want to know about Bishop Smith, about George Smith. So I think that could be partly the reason why he hasn't so much been written about. Another reason, perhaps, is that, you know, if you live in a place, you work in a place, you do your significant work there, then you go back home. Neither place really owns you. So you've gone back home where your significant work did not take place. So they don't have the same interest in what you did. Whereas the place you left, where you left. Somebody once told me, you needn't worry what people say about you when you've left Hong Kong. The moment you get on the ship, you're totally forgotten. Maybe not entirely the case for Bishop. So, Vernon. So Vernon will now read us some lovely passages from the book. And just to remind you again, that this was the period of the so-called Opium Wars between China and some Western countries, and also of the Taiping Rebellion and some internal disturbances in China. So in September 1853, Bishop Smith and his family were in Shanghai during a period of local disturbance. If anybody's got the book already, pages 203 to 204.
Monday, September the 26th, 1853. I accompanied my wife and Miss Hobson, wife of the colonial chaplain, with her little boy and our own elder child in chairs on an excursion into the fields in the west of the foreign settlement. A little more than a mile distant, seeing the Reverend Mr. Milne of the London Missionary Society, also with his wife and child, taking the air, and hearing shouts and signs of excitement in the direction for which he was making, I hurried on to overtake him and learn the particulars. We had time to send our wives and children back to their home without any danger of molestation on the way, while we waited to learn the issue of the affair. On the preceding night, the villagers in a little place before us on the bank of the river, and on the other side of what is commonly called the Sucha Bridge, fearing the displeasure of the imperialists, burnt down the houses of 2 or 3 villagers who had joined the rebels in the city. This brought upon them the vengeance of the rebels, who were now expected to be the number of 2,000 from the city. 2,000 from the city, to punish them for the outrage of the preceding night. Several hundred villagers were drawn up and lined the bank on the further side of the bridge, beating gongs, brandishing spears, and raising shouts of defiance. We expected to see the rebels advance over the fields before us, when suddenly we found them defiling from a path in the rear. The rebels rushed forward, yelling and shouting. Between the 2 hostile parties, we had to turn back and to pass on a narrow causeway, scarcely a yard wide. Above 2,000 rebels brandishing their naked swords and spears, with feelings the reverse of pleasant at the thought that any one of these ruffians, who might be excited by draughts of samshu or the fumes of opium, might with impunity bury his weapon in our bosoms. My companion deemed it useless to address any words of a pacific nature to men so excited by the recent murder of their messenger. They rushed onward, shouting, "Slaughter them! Kill them!"
In December 1858, George Smith decided to take advantage of the very new treaty, which permitted more extensive travel within China than previously allowed, and travelled with his wife Lydia and little daughter Alice without a passport. He just didn't bother. He was advised, don't bother, just go. Bishop Smith makes favourable comments about the city of Shaohing, which they passed through on the way to Hangzhou, pointing out its suitability for missionary endeavour and expressing an often repeated hope for additional manpower for the mission field. Those have got the book, page 297.
Mr. Russell and myself walked for 2 miles along the bank of the fine, spacious canal, lined with streets containing a busy, well-clad and apparently thriving population, and abounding with corroborative evidence to support its claim to celebrity as among the most beautiful and the most literary department cities of the empire. Here there is a vast population of friendly demeanour and high intellectual refinement accessible to the instruction of the foreign missionary. As we mingled with a group of well-dressed people on the parapet, listening to the words of my companion and readily volunteering information on the city and its inhabitants, I could not but feel the wish that our highly educated British youth at the great seats of academic learning could behold this noble sphere for their dedication of the highest talents of ability, energy, and zeal to the honourable endeavour of making known the Saviour's name among this highly interesting but pagan district. Shaohing enjoys no mean celebrity for the intellectual character of its citizens and scholars.
Having arrived at Hangzhou, the group became the objects of extreme interest. Page 301.
As we sat in our sedan chairs, the rapidly increasing crowd pressed upon us to such a degree that we were nearly upset. And as we were on the brink of the canal, such a casualty would have precipitated us into the water. Mrs. Smith and our little girl were conveyed with me to a large open area between some temples to avoid the pressure of the multitude. Here we were soon surrounded by about 1,000 people, anxious to gratify their curiosity. The chair bearers proposed to us that we should alight and retreat into a temple, but fearing lest they should in the meantime decamp with the chairs and expose us also to the more serious inconvenience of losing our supply of food for 24 hours, which we had providently placed in a basket under one of the sedans, I resolutely declined. As the most helpful resource in gaining the goodwill of the crowd and preserving their friendly humour, I held up our little daughter, 4 years old, to public gaze. The loud acclamation and applause which followed this act proved that such a little hostage for our pacific intentions was attended with no small advantage. Old mothers, young wives, and little children pressed around me to handle and caress the foreign child. And we had in her a full security against any mischievous proceedings.
Apart from descriptions of unusual events, such as those Bernard's just read, Journeys with a Mission has a great deal about individual missionaries, church services, missionary policy and strategies, Chinese inquirers and converts, and the bishop's insistence on the importance of a Chinese priesthood. Here is one example, page 272.
Our little assembling together this evening seemed to be attended with a good influence in restoring full cordiality and union. Bao, the well-known and long-tried catechist, in his address adverted to the fact that since my visit 8 months ago, there had been 12 new converts, including 2 adults and 2 children, in the Sanpo district. He spoke also of the increased spirit of inquiry perceptible among the Chinese, the encouraging prospects of extending the mission under the greater privileges of itinerancy and toleration secured by the new treaty, and the evident proofs of the pending political troubles and civil convulsions of China, having directed the attention of some of his fellow countrymen to the gospel as a means of comfort and support under their trials. He especially noticed the incident of a Hangzhou gentleman, lately in one of the chapels rising after Bao's address, and publicly telling the people present, "Now the emperor permits you all to become believers."
Thank you very much. Rising notes. Thank you very much. Questions? Questions, comments, answers? Yes?
2 questions. First of all, you mentioned the importance of the Chinese mission. Did he himself learn Chinese language?
Yes.
If so, where? And the second question, you say that this is an uncensored version. What was left out from the original version?
Okay. Sorry.
What was left out from the original version?
Well, what was left out from the original published version? Well, it's very, very interesting to see what was left out. It's sort of, it makes sense. So anything negative about the Church Missionary Society was omitted. Anything which was contrary to their policy was omitted. Anything which was about sex was omitted. So, for example, the word rape would be replaced by the word violence, or omitted altogether. So these sorts, I mean, it makes perfect sense why there were those changes. I think also, if another mission was spoken about positively, maybe that was omitted. So in other words, this was presented as an official, the official writing of the Church Missionary Society. And in one of the articles, they do explain their policy. That they say that everything is edited, and once published, it becomes their words, as it were. So they take full responsibility for what was published in their journals. So quite fascinating to look at the changes. I think in some cases, probably, they couldn't read the writing either. Because when I was working on the originals, I did try to find the published version to help me with some of the words that were really, really difficult. But in some cases, they had cut that part. So it could be that in some cases, they hadn't been able to read it. a very fair reason for omitting some. As far as I think that covers all the examples. Well, perhaps I could also make some comment about that. So, the fact that material was omitted shows us the value of publishing the original, because it gives us a different idea of the personality of the bishop. So he wasn't a Victorian, prudish bishop. He wrote it down, but other people censored it because of what they thought their readership could stomach. What he had to say, for example, about Buddhism, other religions. He does show an interest in that he made friends with Buddhist priests and Catholic priests. I'm afraid he's quite strong about the Catholic religion, because in a sense it was a rivalship situation. Catholics were there before. So, and he did draw a parallel between Catholicism and Buddhist practices, a lot of ritual. He was very, very low church. Extremely low church. The religion practiced by the saints, meaning the original church, that was what he was particularly interested in. So where did he learn Chinese? So when he first went to China as a missionary, he went through Hong Kong, and they were told, oh, you shouldn't stay in Hong Kong, your ear is going to get spoiled, you must instantly go to the mainland and find a teacher there. Recommendation to a teacher on the mainland. And it seems from later writings, it seems that the teacher was a Buddhist monk who was the teacher. But I mean, not having studied Chinese myself, I don't know how people here who have studied Chinese would agree. But the saying was that learning Chinese, you have to be strong. You have to be in good health. If you're not in good health, it's too difficult. Maybe in those circumstances then, no air conditioning, tropical illnesses, etc. None of the comforts that they were used to at home. The amount of time, the number of hours you had to spend. But when he was invalided out, and there was a very definite medical note saying that he would not be useful if he remained in China, because his health was not good enough. I think you probably caught maybe dysentery or something like that at the very beginning. And then that kept on recurring through all the journeys that he had. You talk about my old illness. So yes, he studied Chinese. Probably his writing wasn't hugely good, but I believe he would have preached in Chinese. He knew enough to interact with the missionaries who were doing local translations in the various dialects. He was rather in favour of using a standard dialect rather than the local dialects, because he felt that the work would be wasted. It would only serve a very small portion of the likely of those who were there to be evangelized. So he really wanted to reach as many people as possible. So I have no third-party testimony to how good his Chinese was, but I do know that he learned it, he studied it. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
So you said that he spent some time in China before he was,
Yeah.
I don't know how to use this.
Do they need it for their...
Oh, okay. I always get feedback problems with microphones. How long did he spend in this part of the world before he was enthroned to the bishopric?
Well, I think it was about 18 months before he became ill. Then he went back to England, a representative of the Church Missionary Society, going around, called an association secretary, going around England, and he was appealing for support for the idea of a mission to China. So he was a fundraiser, and it seems surprising that having been invalided out, he would be sent back as a bishop. But the point was, he had the sort of Anglicanism that the new Archbishop of Canterbury wanted. They didn't want a high church person to come out. They wanted a missionary, a person with missionary interest. And so he was selected for his known missionary zeal. So a few years in Britain fundraising. After he was made bishop, he still did fundraising. The reason was that actually there wasn't really enough money to start the bishopric. And so a solution was found which really caused a lot of problems for him. The solution was the combination of the bishopric with the wardenship of St. Paul's Missionary College. So somebody gave money for St. Paul's Missionary College. So if the bishop is also the warden of that college, those funds become available to him, but must be spent in the missionary college, not on general purposes. But so putting these sums of money together, the church hierarchy decided there was enough money to start a new bishopric. So follow the money. It's really, really easy. Anybody else?
Thank you for your excellent speaking.
Thank you.
I want to know something. At the time, you said the Taiping uprising
Right.
instead of rebellion.
Yes.
There are many people come from mainland China to Hong Kong.
Right.
Is that the missionaries is focused on this type of persons?
I don't know the answer to that.
Is that they focus on this refugee from the Taiping,
No, I don't know the answer.
Taiping uprising?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the question, but I do know that one of the people who became prominent in the Taiping, do you want me to call it a rebellion or an uprising? Which is the more appropriate word?
Pardon?
Which is the more appropriate word for me to use? Should I call it a rebellion or should I call it an uprising?
Because there are two different views
Oh,
of
okay.
action, so I have different
I see,
vocabulary.
I see. So what should I say?
Rebellion.
Rebellion, I would say rebellion. Shall we have a vote?
That's okay.
So the one person had been living with one of the missionaries in Hong Kong, and then he then went back to the mainland and he became prominent in the rebellion. Right? Now, I don't know whether they focused on people fleeing from the rebellion in Hong Kong, but I do know a slightly different piece of information, that Bishop Smith was very excited by the Christian elements of the Taiping rebellion. He was tremendously excited. He thought here was a chance to proselytize the whole of China because of the perceived Christian interest or influence on the original leaders, I think, of the rebellion. People then believed that they were going to win. So then they would be ruling the whole of China, and therefore, if they were Christian, in any sense, then China would become Christian. So he was terribly excited, and but he was cautious. He wasn't uncritically excited, but he thought he should find out. And to substantiate his interest, his wife was about 8 months pregnant, and something happened on the mainland that with the rebellion. And he thought, I must go. I must go now. So he spoke to his wife. I wonder what he said. Darling, I hope you don't mind. I've got to go to China now. And it is written, he did write down in a letter that he said to her, as soon as the baby is born, you must follow me. And that is what she did. Unfortunately, on the way, there was a typhoon, a terrible storm at sea. And she was very worried because the baby had not been baptized. Because Bishop Smith had said to her, don't baptize the baby, I will baptize it in China. So here she is on the ship, new baby, not baptized, storm. Are they going to drown? So she baptized the baby, which you're allowed to do. Not so sure. Not so sure.
In those years, today is we could say it's canonical, but not but not a regular practice.
Thank you. Very carefully spoken. So when she arrived, he did, however, baptize the baby again. And apparently this is not good at all. You're not supposed to re-baptize the baby, right? So he wanted to show the congregation what baptism was like in his baby too. So I think this shows you that he was really, really interested. He wrote various things, and he wrote to the British public saying, we must get more missionaries. We have to have more missionaries to go to China. I can't answer any better than that, I'm afraid. I must work hard.
Thank you.
Gillian, one of my senior schoolmates in Queen's College said his great-grandfather, who was an orphan, was taken by Bishop George Smith to Britain to be educated, and then returned to Hong Kong to study at St. Paul's College. Did you come across any information about that story?
Not yet. Not yet, but I will look for it. Do you have the name? Can you write it?
Chen Daigong in Cantonese.
Oh, I think I do know about him.
It seems my schoolmate who's now living in Vancouver, he brought back some of his family archives, and I visited Vancouver last June, and he showed me two pictures at the Victoria College at Hollywood Road, the second premises of my mother's school. But a lot of these records were disappeared, and his great-grandfather seemed to be involved in some sort of opium,
Yes. Yes, I do know about this.
some sort of scandal or whatever.
Yes.
So he wanted to find out all the facts, but unfortunately he couldn't find too much detail, and that's why I tried to ask
Yes.
on his behalf.
No, I can tell you something about him. So he came out from England with Bishop Smith. He came out.
Perhaps he was an orphan, and that's why George Smith thought this would be a potential Chinese missionary, you know. And last year was this 200th anniversary of Yinghua College, and the great-grandson of James Lett came over to Hong Kong and asked one question about why James Lett proposed to set up a central school and offer secular education in Hong Kong instead of religious college like the other Yinghua College or DBS, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that was under the influence of the
reform of public school education in Britain. Obviously, it's difficult to find the answer, but he seemed to agree with me. But there were 3 students brought by the missionaries to Britain to see Queen Victoria at that time. And perhaps that was one of the reasons why, because they want to see the result of this sort of education being taken effect in Asia. And that was my guess why these students were allowed to see Queen Victoria. And it's difficult to find all these facts now, but the story of my schoolmate was very legendary and worth us to look further, I guess.
Yes, so he is mentioned in Bishop Smith's correspondence. So Chandy Kong, he did come out with Bishop Smith on the boat from England. And it was hoped that he would become a missionary. But it seems he became discouraged because of the differential salary for Western clergymen and local clergymen. And when he compared what he would receive with what other Chinese people received as government servants or as compradors, working as compradors, he was very discouraged. Now he was one of the people who travelled with Bishop Smith on the mainland. And so there is some story about Bishop Smith sending him and the other one, I've forgotten his name for the time being, the one who had been in Australia. Well, never mind. So two Chinese, Cantonese, travelled with Bishop Smith, and Bishop Smith wanted them to make contact with the Taiping leaders. And so they were sent, and they were very frightened because the Taiping leaders were nervous about other Cantonese. Somebody was nervous about Cantonese people, and they would think they would be spies. And so Bishop Smith had sleepless nights worrying about them after they had been sent. But then they came back, fortunately, and he decided he would not ask anybody to do that again. But he does say that he was very disappointed with this gentleman. And later, as you say, there was a scandal. I think it was to do with opium. But I didn't know the end of the story. So you are the key to the end of the story. So we very much hope you can give us some more information. We can piece the information together. As far as the question about secular education is concerned, why did James then propose secular education? The reason was that religious education, the missionary schools, it depends how you define failure, but they had not been successful in creating enough local clergy. They had not been successful. And of course, follow the money, there has to be money. And where did the money come from? It came from home, wherever home was, Germany or England or wherever. And so what do the people at home want to know? They want to know, how many baptisms have there been this year? No baptisms. Why are we sending all this money if we don't have any results in conversions? And so James then proposed the government should pay for education, and he still hoped that the church, or churches, missionaries, could have influence on the government schools. And so Frederick Stewart, Queen's College, you are a Queen's College boy, shall we say. So Frederick Stewart, I think Bishop Smith must have been surprised that Frederick Stewart did not wish to pursue religious education in the central school because the students were of various religions. And he said religion is the point of all points on which people are the most sensitive. And he said it's not the business of government to interfere with people's religion. And so he stopped the teaching of the Bible in the central school. Also because the Chinese teachers who were teaching it were disparaging the Christian religion. They were not sincere. They were saying, oh, I don't know what they were saying. What they were probably saying, this is rubbish, don't believe in it. And so when he found that out, of course, he would stop the teaching of the Bible in the school. But Bishop Smith actually had very much hoped to influence education in the government schools. He was chairman of the Board of Education. He did have a representative on the board. You know, if he was absent, he did have a representative at all times on that board. And so I think Bishop Smith probably was a bit disappointed with Frederick Stewart, whom he admired for other reasons, highly successful and well esteemed, because he didn't sanction the continuance of the church infiltrating, I think, into government education. Thank you very much for the information.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody was very pleased to hear it.
Well, thank you, Gillian. If there's any, we can take one more question. And if there's no questions, then I'd like to thank our speaker, our moderator, Bishop Andrew. Thank you for being with us this evening. Vernon Kipley for readings, and of course our guest speaker tonight, Gillian Bigby. Thank you very much. On behalf of the library, please allow me to try to have another hand to pass this out.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.
We'll do that. And our next book talk will be on the 28th of March, and it's in collaboration with the Hong Kong U School of Journalism and Media Studies Center and the United States of America Consulate General here in Hong Kong and for Macau. The book talk is called The Last Boat Out of Shanghai by Helen Zhang. And it'll basically be a personal experience of the refugee migration during the 1949. So that'll be on the 28th of March, and we hope to see you there. Thank you for coming. Good night.